Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I, Ashish Chauhan, Director of Blue Tech Media, would like to welcome all to the first webinar in a series on pathways to tackle MEG4 challenges organized by Blue Tech Media and powered by Broadside Marine. As we are all aware, MEG4 has been widely accepted by the tanker industry since its release in 2018 as has done well. The MEG4 recommendations have received widespread acceptance as the most reliable standard for mooring equipment to date. The consequences of MEG4 extend beyond the tanker industry, though. They are also clear in the inspection of dry ships and upcoming IMO regulations. As a result, the first series of the webinar will be concentrated on pathways to tackle MEG4 challenges. So, before we begin the webinar, let me give you more information about our online platform. You will find a blue button at the bottom left side of your screen, which says click here for options. Once you click that button, you will be able to see four more options. Number one would be show agenda. So here you will be able to download the agenda of the webinar today. Second is ask a question. You will be able to ask the questions to our eminent speakers and the panelists. We'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Third option is open live chat, wherein you will be able to chat with all your fellow members attending this webinar as well. The fourth and the most important is the poll. I would request you all to please participate. So once again, let me inform you all that we will open the floor for Q&A at the end of the session. I would encourage our attendees to participate in the discussion by submitting your questions. Our panelists and speakers will do their best to address as many of your questions as possible during the Q&A session. And also request you all to click the poll button and give your opinion, as this will help us to understand the exact challenge being faced by your fleet. So once again, thank you for joining us today. I hope you will find your time spent here worthwhile. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the webinar. To start the webinar today, let me now welcome Captain Ritesh Kumar. So the Captain Ritesh Kumar is a MEG4 expert who have assisted tanker operations for mooring reviews and continued MEG4 compliance for more than 250 tanker vessels so far. He will now outline the objective of the today's webinar. So welcome on board, Captain Ritesh Kumar. Over to you.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, everybody. The maritime industry has seen many incidents during mooring operations over the last decades. Among other factors, due to high frequency of mooring operations and their high level of human involvement. Says who? MaritimeCyprus.com. 2 to 7 mooring-related incidents reported in 5 years. 22% of these incidents resulted in injury. Says who? EMSA. 97% of ships that had a mooring incident on board during the last 24 months. This was reported by no other than UK P&I in 2016. From 1997 to 2013, 402 incidents were registered on Danish ships, with 4 fatalities and 43 injuries reported by SOLAS Subcommittee for Ship Design and Construction. There is something certainly very crucial here, and it is a no-brainer that we are talking about mooring safety. And when we talk about mooring safety, there is no other publication as revered as the OCMF MEG4. Hello there, I am Ritesh Kumar. I am the co-founder of Broadside Marine, and I will be playing the role of the moderator for the webinar today based on the super interesting topic of MEG4. So, over to you, Ashish.
So Ritesh Kumar, we have your presentation, and I'm sure you'd like to go through the presentation and take us through.
Okay, all right. Okay, Ashish. So before we embark on our voyage, let me add a little more about myself and our company and our association with MEG4. Sorry. Let me discuss. Let me tell you something about our company. Broadside Marine Private Limited is in the industry since 2016. We are offering marine-related technical services to our clients worldwide. We do believe that safety and commercial profits go hand in hand in the long term, for which we are always ready to walk that extra mile. We are proud to have the level of service we provide to customers and the standards we uphold. We have been working with some biggest tanker operators such as Eastern Pacific, Eagle Star, Anglo Eastern, V Ships, FML, and Synergy. Our association, our engagement with MEG4, now MEG4, as we all know, was published in 2018. But our engagement with MEG4 started little later next year in 2019. At first, we started with designing of MSMP, LMP, which was required immediately. But as the time grew, we graduated to provide end-to-end solution for continued MEC4 compliance. Today, we provide right from gap analysis for mooring procedures, designing of MSMP, LMP, mooring reviews, be it vessel specific or fleet specific, risk mitigations, mooring analysis, mooring evaluations, engineering assessments, re-strengthening exercises, and associated shipyard supervision. Then why are we here? In what capacity? Well, we have helped more than 250 vessels in MEC4 compliance over last few years. During this period, we have gained a lot of knowledge. We have seen few gaps. We have been able to navigate through those gaps. Of course, in this, we had a lot of communication with the tanker operators, classification societies, shipyards, equipment manufacturers, and rope makers, etc. Now, MEC4 being was published by OCIMF mainly for tanker industry, but it is so comprehensive works on vessel mooring so that it is rightly being advocated even by right ships and even being used by IMO for framing rules for new builds after 1st Jan 2024. And these new builds, mind you, is not only tankers, it's all ships, all cargo ships above a certain tonnage. We are also planning to focus our attention to dry operators for the same reason. We have been approved by Lloyd's Register to conduct environmental calculations in line with OCMF MEC4 since 2019. So this was a little bit about me, our company, and our works with respect to MEC4. These are my contact details. So that's about us. Thank you, Ashish. Over to you.
Thank you, Captain Ritesh, for setting the tone of the webinar today. And I would request you to please stay with me on stage while we invite all the other panelists for the next panel discussion. So now, before we proceed further and invite our panelists, I would request all our participants to remember to write your questions by clicking the button, Ask a Question button. So let's go ahead and invite our panelists now. To begin with, let me call upon Captain Chakshu Datta, Fleet Management Limited Manager, Tanker Operations, professional with over 25 years of experience in maritime industry, has special interest in MEC4. At Fleet Management, he has contributed to implementation of changes to mooring management guidelines and improving real-world solutions to ships. So welcome, Captain Chakshu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Ritesh, for having me here.
Thank you. Our next panelist, Captain Yazad Bumla, Marine Manager, Synergy Nevis Marine. He is Marine Manager and DPA at Synergy Nevis Marine, overseeing safe operations for a fleet of over 30 parcel chemical and oil vessels and leading a team of marine superintendents to closely monitor vessel activities and marine assurance matters. He has been a leading part of the team ensuring MEC4 compliance in the fleet at Synergy Nevis. So welcome, Captain Yazad Bumla. Welcome on board.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Let me welcome our final panelist, Captain Ravi Sekhar Belu, Group Investigation Manager, V-Ships. He has been with V-Ships for 11 years, out of which he has Global Audit Manager for 7 years. He has been engaged in risk mitigation with respect to MEG4 compliance in his fleet. I welcome all the panelists and the moderator, Captain Ritesh Kumar. So I hand over to Captain Ritesh Kumar to continue with the panel discussion.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you very much. Now let's go to the most important session of this webinar. I'll be starting panel discussion with our distinguished panelists. So let's start with Captain Chakshu Datta. Captain Chakshu, we have been hearing the term ship design MBL or SDMBL again and again. So this question relates to the same factor. Now, since SDMBL value becomes the core parameter as per MEG4, where all other mooring parameters and numbers revolve directly or indirectly around the value of SDMBL. Now, what are the various criteria that shall be taken into account for the assignment of SDMBL? Please, over to you, Captain Chakshu.
Thank you, Ritesh, and thank you, Bluetech and Broadside for having me on board this interesting discussion. And this takes me around 10 years back when I was. When I was watching my wife reading novels. She's an avid reader, so she reads a lot of books, and once I saw that she's reading the same book again and again, and to that I asked her, why are you reading this book again? So she told me that it gives me a different perspective every time. So taking that point, when I read any book, yeah, and when I read and when I go back to MEG4, and I keep this point, and this gives me a better understanding of the topic when I read it again and again. So, Ritesh, you asked me what is ship design MBL. Now, ship design MBL is a calculation of ship's specific mooring line strength, and which is a fundamental factor used to ensure that all other parts of the mooring system are correctly specified. Now, earlier, rope manufacturers documented minimum breaking strength using different approaches. For example, ISO mentioned MBL as unspliced strength, and manufacturers in US used the spliced
Right.
ones. Some manufacturers used average minimum breaking strength, and others used two standard deviations below the lowest actual breaking strength. Now, this
Right.
usage of different approach could result in a variation of around 20% above the declared strengths. And now we
Okay.
all must have come across the terms actual breaking strength and nominal breaking strength in some of the older rope certificates. And there was always
Right.
that confusion on which MBL to use, actual or nominal.
Right.
One of the primary challenges faced by tanker operator is to ensure ordering the right size of rope for their vessel. Now, to remove
Right.
that ambiguity, a lot of work has been done to simplify understanding and bring uniformity. And OCMF has collaborated with various institutions to clearly define a set of terms, test methodologies for mooring line MBL. And that can be used both by users and manufacturers. So, minimum breaking load, which was earlier referred to in MEG3, now has been further divided into three terms: SDMBL,
Okay.
LDBF, and WLL. Now,
Right.
SDMBL is ship specific mooring line strength. LDBF is line design break force, minimum force at which a new dry rope will break when tested to the criteria mentioned in MEG4, Appendix B. And
Okay.
working load limit is the maximum load which a rope should be subjected to in its operational service.
Correct.
Now,
Very correct.
yeah, STMBL was something which was not heard by the maritime industry before 2018. And there are various philosophies or criteria just because there are more than one regulators. Now, one is the statutory by way of the IMO circulars mandated by classification society criteria, and other is the customers like the MEG4, MESCAC, port terminals regulations, etc., etc. So first one I will touch upon is IACS, the International Association of Classification Societies, which they have defined rules which provide for minimum MBL of mooring lines, and it may be linked to the SDMBL. For
Correct.
example, earlier EN number was used as a base criteria, where a
Right.
range of numbers would be allotted to a vessel's size basis certain criteria like freeboard, wind, and the current acting on vessel. They provide minimum number of mooring lines for that, minimum length of the line required, and the minimum braking strength for those lines. So this was the EN number. And if I want to give you an example for, let's say, a EN number of 400 to 450 would ask for a minimum of four mooring lines, minimum length of, let's say, around 120 to 140 meters, and a minimum braking strength of 98 to 100 kilonewtons. Now, MEG4 provides a process flow to calculate SDML of vessel based on the vessel's hull size and form, the standard environmental criteria, and lastly, a very important point is vessel's mooring arrangement. But
Okay.
however, these criteria cannot be seen in isolation.
Okay.
It entails the mooring forces calculation, and again, this criteria cannot be the only criteria, as there are some basic mooring system design principles which need to be followed.
Okay.
Another criteria which we come across, which are required by certain terminals for clearance, is called MESCAC, Marine Environment Safety Quality Assurance Criteria. Now, this
Right.
is a straightforward demand of minimum number of mooring lines and their MBL, basis vessel's dead weight. So, for example, if I take a dead weight of in the range of 45,000 to 70,000, the minimum number of mooring lines they would expect is 10, and the braking strength would be minimum 50 to 53 tons. So this is the MESCAC criteria which we're talking about.
Okay.
Another factor which is to be looked into and not to be ignored is the port and terminals, who sometimes have varying requirements with respect to MBL of ropes, and which indirectly affects the SDMBL which is introduced in MEG4. Many a times these requirements are outdated and are not reviewed against the latest terminologies and standards. And now we come across this challenge of selecting the right value of SDMBL, especially for our existing ships,
Right.
which were designed basis various industry standards effective that time. Now,
Correct.
to give you an example, let's say we take a 70,000 deadweight ship, which is built in 2002. It has 6 winches forward and 6 winches up, a total of 12 inches. The winch brake holding given in the yard test, 80% is, let's say, 56 tons, and if we back calculate, the 60% gives around 42 tons.
Right.
The direct lead for these chokes from the winches, let's say they have a SWL of 70 tons.
Right.
Somehow, during the construction, only the aft spring winch, which have the direct lead chokes, those direct lead chokes are having the SWL of 60 tons.
Right.
Now, if it was today, uh, we would have directly back calculated the 60% to a value, SDMBL of 70 tons,
Right.
because these chokes of offspring are 60 tons, which are
Correct.
less than the should be SDMPL of 70 tons. We may have to recalculate the SDMPL, keeping all the
Right.
criterias in mind, right? Now, uh, we cannot keep SDMBL value higher than the mooring fittings. That is understood. And
Correct.
now to carry out everything safely, how we approach, we do a risk assessment. Risk assessment of what? Of the mooring pattern and the restraint force calculations, which will give us a load which this size of vessel can take, basis the standard criterias and basis the available number of winches on board. Then we
Right.
divide that calculated load by number of winches to come to a minimum load per line. And that's how we find out we find out solutions to address these gaps.
Assign the esteem. Right.
Yeah. Now this was about SDMBL. Another point which I want to touch upon here is validation. Uh, in 2019, I remember we all were struggling to calculate SDMBL values, and it was the hot topic that days. And uh, I was doing it way, you were doing it your way. All the companies were struggling to figure out what is the right SDMBL for their vessels and how to approach. And I remember discussing it with you, and that was a bottleneck because I was thinking I was doing it correctly. You were thinking, or any other third person was thinking that they were doing it correctly. And we came to a solution that we should approach the recognized organization, and I congratulate you that you did it with Lloyd's. You got your validation from the Lloyd's on your environmental criteria calculations. So yes, this is a touch upon SDMBL from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the mention, Captain Chakshu. Thank you for that. And thank you for the such a deep discussion, really diving deep into the value of STMPL and other associated values. I will continue on the same direction for the second question, which is very closely related to the first one. Now, just now you have mentioned that as a tanker operator, there are so many regulators, and we have to follow all of them or nearly all of them. So, how as a vessel operator, now you have a big fleet. So, how as a vessel operator you have been able to navigate through the challenge of varying standards to comply with various stakeholders with uh, merchant vessels have limited onboard resources. So, for example, even after complying with MEG4, the local terminals may ask for a totally different type of mooring lines or mooring arrangement, or even worse, oil majors may dictate different standards. So, how have you navigated through such a big fleet of vessels, Captain Chakshu?
Yeah, Ritesh, thank you. Yeah, once again, the only objective of MEG Edition 4 is to prevent any kind of human injury, and they have been vocal about it. This always stays at the core of any rules, standards, and exercise, but we have to accept that there are various standards in industry through various stakeholders who do not speak the same language. Now, when they are
Correct.
talking differently, it becomes more important as a tanker operator to navigate through these challenges and come out with the best solution. And for that, we need to
Right.
be abreast of the requirements, the available systems, and then finding the best solution around the available standards. So,
Right.
as a first step for this exercise, it would be the study of the vessel's mooring procedures and practices on board. Any gaps which are found shall be addressed as per the internal policy procedures. The next step may be find the vessel's original mooring design philosophy when the vessel was constructed. Now, it is extremely important to identify to which standards the vessel has been originally made. Third step
Right.
is to find out if any major changes have taken place during the ship's life cycle. Original versus
Right.
present fixtures. You would cross check them, the dry dock records, etc. Original mooring design philosophy shall be then compared with all the applicable standards today. And there may not be an immediate need to come to a new standard, but in any case, a gap analysis has to be made. For example, there is a clear
Correct.
difference in the standard environmental criteria being used by IACS, which I touched upon, and the OCIMF MEG 4, which is mentioned in MEG 4. Now,
Correct.
OCIMF uses a more severe weather as a standard environmental criteria,
Correct.
and which means we are erring on the safer side. Now, for a new ship, OCIMF also recommends that the standard environmental criteria in this publication should be specified as for use in the ship design, mooring analysis, and subsequent shipboard mooring equipment configurations, and not the EN number derived from the mooring equipment configuration. So there will be gaps, but once the gaps are found out, then a risk assessment shall be performed in light of MEG4.
Correct.
These new guidelines suggest few measures and do not expect us to upgrade the standards, or for that matter change the entire mooring equipment on board as a knee jerk reaction. We have to run all the gaps through exhaustive risk assessment process, making use of the tools provided by MEG4. We also have to accept that it is very difficult that a pre MEG 4 ship comes to MEG 4 standards. We have to try to match it, but we cannot match it in totality. There will be
Right.
some gaps, and those gaps shall be the ones we can live with. We have to find a solution, but we can live with that. At last, I would like to sum up that there are no rules or standards which are bigger than the human life, and hence any changes done on board or to the procedures due to a variation in standards shall not take away our focus of human safety, and now which is the ultimate goal of the present mooring equipment guidelines edition 4. So that's it from my side.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Chakshu. I think you have very rightly touched upon this, painful topic, that how do we navigate through various regulators as a tanker operator. And you have summed it up also quite well, where we try to match the gap, we try to close the gap as much as possible through the tools which is suggested in MEC4. But we have to also accept that pre-MEC4 tankers, it will be very difficult for them to come up to MEC4 suddenly, and it should not be rightly expected as well. So thank you. Thank you for such a deep dive into a technical topic, Captain Chakshu. Thank you. Let's
Thank you, Ritesh.
let's proceed to next type of next segment of the MEC4. Uh, Captain Yazad, uh, MEC4, as MEC4 asks us to identify the original mooring design philosophy. This is when was the vessel constructed, because there has to be some specification, there has to be some standards when vessel are being made. But how about the older tonnage? Tankers which are old enough. So you have a big fleet. So what practical issues have you faced during your time establishing the original mooring design philosophy for an old tanker?
Yeah, hi Ritesh. Thank you for having me here once again. And yes, the problem that you mentioned is something that we have exactly faced in the recent past. Sometime back, about 2 years back, we took over a few ships which were almost 15 years old. So we did face those same exact challenges that you mentioned. So establishing the original mooring design philosophy of vessel can be a complex process. And there may be quite a few practical issues that you can face during this task. This is especially true if the vessel in question is an older tonnage or older vessel, and also if she it may not be that old, but she may have changed owners several times, or operators several times, or
Correct.
even class society quite a few times. So some of the challenges that you can expect on such vessels is one would be lack of documentation available. The original mooring design philosophy may be documented not in one place as a go-to document. It could be in various forms such as drawings, calculations, specifications, builder specs, reports. Uh, Due to the passage of time or poor record keeping, some of these documents, several of these documents may be missing. They may be incomplete. These documents could be lost. They may have got inadvertently destroyed during changes in ownership or technical management. They may not be maintained properly the way they should be, and may not be available for review. These can make it challenging to determine the original design intent, the assumptions, the parameters that were used to develop the moving system. There have been changes in regulations. The regulatory this is another aspect that would concern most people in this situation. The regulatory environment for a vessel design and construction has evolved over time, as we know. The
Correct.
first MEG came out in 1992, second 2008, and sorry, second 97, I think. Third was in 2008, and now you have MEG4 in 2018. So the original mooring design philosophy may have been based on older standards that are no longer in use. For instance, these vessels that I mentioned, we took over 2 years back in 2021. They were built from 2005 when not even MEG3 was, the current regime. They were compliant with MEG2 regime. So there have been certain changes that have come about. So it's hard to really reconcile the current regime with the design philosophy of that time. There could have been modifications to the vessel. That is another aspect which would make it difficult to assess the design philosophy. There could be modifications for certain terminals, certain operational requirements. In such cases, the original design philosophy may no longer even be applicable, or it may need to be revised. And that can only be done with a thorough study of the vessel's current configuration and the vessel's current mooring requirements. Uh, you would probably expect some incomplete information. Like I said, if you've had several changes, ownership, class over time, the original calculations may not be available or may not have been provided by the yard. Uh, you may have the yard, the yard at that time may have used some of their own software, and they may not be giving you all the calculations that they did at that time. Uh, in some cases, it's as simple as finding the equipment number, which can be a challenge. It may not be that easy. So you might have to go into the anchoring equipment plans and drawings to actually find out, well, what is the equipment number. So critical information can get lost over time. So that's always a
Correct.
challenge. And you can have different design standards depending on the age of the vessel. Depending on where the vessel was constructed, when it was constructed, the original mooring design philosophy may have been based on different design standards than those used today. This can make it challenging to compare the original intent of mooring standards to
Right.
the current industry standards.
Right.
For example, something as simple as the D by D ratio, which as per MEG3 was a minimum of 12. In MEG4, it is suggested to have the D by D ratio of at least 15. So,
Right.
yeah, to summarize, I think identifying the original mooring design philosophy of a vessel can be quite a challenging task, especially on older tonnage vessels, which have had several changes in ownership, technical management, class societies due to lack of documentation, regulatory changes, modifications, if any, to the vessel, incomplete information available, differences in design standards, and it may require a thorough investigation, a deep dive study, analysis of all the available information right now to establish the original mooring philosophy. Yeah, I think
Right.
that covers it. I think.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, though it seemed very easy where to find the original mooring design philosophy, but it is. It looks like it seems like after you answer that it has not been so easy ride for you to actually find the mooring design original mooring design philosophy. So thank you for letting us know, Captain Yadav. Uh, now let's talk a little bit about mooring lines. We have been getting a lot of questions. Let's talk about mooring lines. Captain Yazar, uh, back to you. Uh, what all parameters, what all values does a tanker operator has to consider before ordering mooring lines, which are safe, economical, complies with all the parameters? Are there any standard procedures for ordering as per the MEG4? And if there are, is it convenient enough to put into practice?
Yes. Things were much simpler in the MEG3 regime. In under MEG3, you had pretty much you just had to look at the length requirement, the diameter of the rope that you wanted, and the minimum breaking strength (MBL). When MEG4 came out, it brought around several new aspects that they wanted the operators or the owners to consider. As we know, MEG4 came out after a study of several industry incidents. One of these was the failure of the mooring lines on the LNG carrier Zarga in the UK, I think. And
Correct.
the investigation showed that there was a lot of industry confusion on mooring line strength terminology. I think Captain
Correct.
Chakshu, pointed a little bit about that earlier. The review of this incident showed that there was a need on guidance for selecting mooring lines that are fit for particular purpose on board. Operational requirements vary. There was a need for better processes to monitor the condition of mooring lines and tails in service. Especially MEG4 particularly emphasizes on the value of having users, which would be us, people in the industry on ships, the owners, the operators. The value of having us having closer relation with rope manufacturers, which wasn't the case in the past, right?
Correct.
So if you go into MEG4, Section 5 is an entire chapter based on mooring lines. This section provides detailed information on lines, uh, aspects for their selection, inspection, maintenance, ordering of these lines, and the responsibilities of the user and the responsibilities of the manufacturers of moving lines and tails is also clearly laid out. Uh, Section 5.2, I think, it gives guidance on the selection of mooring line types for different types of applications. It recommends that selection of mooring lines should be uh, taking in consideration environmental factors, type of the mooring system, the vessel size, operational aspects. Uh, in addition, towards the end of MEG, Appendix B is guidelines for purchasing and testing of mooring lines. This is something that provides both manufacturers of ropes as well as the users with
Correct.
processes for purchasing,
Standard.
processes for testing lines, what documents should be used during the process, sample documents, draft of those, testing methods to be used, the different. It gives a standardization of terminology and definitions to be used, methods that manufacturers can use to demonstrate their compliance with these guidelines is also there. So under MEG4, since the question is about selection of lines, I would say that under MEG4, the user, the operator, the user, the owner is responsible for selecting the correct type of mooring line or tail, which would be appropriate for their intended use. They are also responsible for specifying and procuring these lines and following the guidelines of the manufacturers and preparing their own procedures, which is mainly the LMP, and making sure that the guidelines of their own LMP are followed. Uh, Broadly, line selections are done keeping three criteria in mind, that is, damage criteria, environmental criteria, and operational criteria. The line selection should be done at the design stage itself. If you strictly go as per MEG4, and it has to be done in consultation with the makers. So probably a dialogue has to be had with the makers on the vessel size, type, what kind of uh, operational life you expect for the vessel, and that again brings me back to that earlier point. So this actually brings the users and the operators much closer than they were earlier, right?
Right.
So following uh, that, I would say that the main points to consider when you want to decide on what lines or what tails or wires to procure for a particular vessel, you need to consider the ship design MBL. This, as we know, is the core parameter around which all the components of the mooring system are designed and sized. The LDBF of the rope, in the case of a rope, or TDBF for tails, the minimum force at which a new dry and splice, this is another change in MEG4, splice mooring rope will break, and this LDBF has to be within 100 and 105% of the SDMBL. The working load limit, this is the maximum load that a line should get subjected to during an operation. For ropes, this would be 50%. For wires, it's 55% of the SDMPL. But the main thing is this should never get exceeded during any operational life. The design basis load, that is the design load that you can put on a fitting. This is you have to you arrive at this by multiplying the SDMBL with the geometric factor. Other parameters are probably things like moving line stiffness. As we know, moving wires and HMP ropes are more stiff. Nylon and composite ropes are less stiff, so you have more elongation parameters with soft ropes. So it depends what kind of operational life you're considering. Is it going to have a lot of STS operations in high seas, uh, where you might need less stiffness of the ropes? Uh, those kind of aspects need to be considered. The D by D ratio, it's another thing that comes front and center in MEG4, where they say it should be as large as possible, because with the less D by D ratio, it reduces the braking strength eventually, and repeated bending would reduce the overall life of the rope. So, where depending on the size of your bollards, as we know, HMP ropes have lesser diameters. So, to increase the D by D ratio, one may want to consider using HMP ropes instead of large diameter composite soft ropes. There are several other factors also. Of course, the ship size, the ship type is one of the most important ones. But you need to consider what kind of fair leads you have, the dimensions of the fair leads, which brings us back to D by D ratio probably. Types of fair leads, are they universal roller type fair leads, Panama leads? Uh, Important factor to consider is the likely trading pattern, right? Uh, whether you will have frequent berth
ST.
stays, frequent mooring operations.
Right.
Would you have expectation of longer
STS.
voyages? So STS operations, whether you will be frequently moving at CBM moorings, or combined buoy moorings out at sea. Typically, you expect higher dynamic stresses on the ropes because of that. Environmental conditions, storage protection, even something as simple as storage locations. So, are the mooring ropes going to be protected from sunlight? Will there be UV degradation? So, depending on the extent of UV exposure, there are ropes which are better at facing UV degradation, wires are better. The temperatures that are encountered, is this vessel going to be mainly operating in very high temperature conditions? So there are some ropes which are better than others for handling such conditions. So all in all, several things to be considered. Uh, I would say that compared to MEG3, the parameters that go into deciding what type of ropes are very, very extensive, and it needs a detailed study, a thorough, a dedicated kind of a study into what you want the vessel to be doing, what you expect the vessel to be doing, and then you take the call on what ropes you want to purchase. Of course, you mentioned economical. So as we know, HMP ropes can be much more expensive than normal moving ropes. So
Correct.
that is another factor that has to go into deciding what kind of ropes you want. So if you're going to expect high abrasion damage to the ropes uh, because of dynamic loading factors. Maybe you want to not consider HMP ropes because abrasion damage on HMP ropes can have much more serious consequences because uh, the strength can go down drastically with a little bit of damage, and replacing them can become more expensive. So for such cases where you expect more abrasion damage, maybe it's better to have higher diameter soft ropes, composite ropes, which would be cheaper. So yeah, economical is also a big part of it, right? So you can't just
Definitely. Definitely.
always go for the other
We
things. Yeah.
all are under vessel operations, so economics plays a big part in our daily life. We can't deny that.
Yeah, so I think
You
that's
said that there
pretty
are
much knowledge out of it. Yeah. Thanks.
there are you mentioned that there are the standard procedures for ordering as per MEG4. There are some forms to be used. But I'm coming back to my second part of the question. Uh, are these procedures, are they convenient enough to put into practice?
Uh, they are. There are some challenges. There are some challenges, but I would not say they are inconvenient. It depends on what are the life cycle of the ropes that you want, and everything new brings about its own challenges. But I think we've learned from that, and along with challenges, I think it also brings some advantages. If you see, there is a lot of standardization. Pre MEG4, asking certain questions to rope manufacturers, you would have times when they would not even give you a straight answer. They may not, the sales persons in the manufacturer's office would not even be aware of certain things if you ask them more technical questions. However,
Right.
with M4, you have so much standardization of terminology that you can very easily ask a person about the LDBF. Another major advantage I find is the standardization of the certificates, right? So, in pre-MEG4 periods, I found that certificates had vastly varying information from one maker to the other, from one area to the other, and several times you would struggle to get elongation criteria. I've had some charters asking me for rope elongation criteria, and then we were struggling to get that from the mooring line certificates because it just didn't have that, and those lines were about 3 years old. So the makers were not even interested in entertaining us anymore. But the new MEG4 comes out with its own standard template of certificates, ordering forms, and that makes it simpler. Yes, there was an initial, learning curve, I would say, but it's become a lot more simpler now. Yeah.
Thank you, Captain Yazar, for the deeping dive into some very practical aspects which, as a tanker operator, you have been facing. So, thank you for that. Uh,
Thank you.
uh, let's go towards a little bit about the documentation and audits review part. So, I would like to ask this question from Captain Ravi Shekhar Bellam. Captain Ravi Shekhar, uh, we have been hearing various terms. We have been hearing terms like mooring audit. Then we have been also hearing terms like mooring review. So my question to you is mooring audit and mooring review, are they different, or are they same, or is it necessary to do both of them? And if yes, then can you give us some more details about these two exercises?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Captain Ritesh, for having me here. Very pertinent questions. I think there needs to be a little bit of clarity among operators. I think most of the operators have a better understanding about the audit requirements, and then the review what you said of the mooring equipment and entire system of moorings on board, including that's not only the equipment, the training aspects, and then manpower availability and all those things. Uh, I will not take much time because I think we are a little bit behind the schedule. Uh, when we're talking about the audits, mooring audit was always part of your annual internal audit regime.
Right.
Uh, yeah, but with MEG4 coming into effect, I think the emphasis on auditing is to verify that the process are what we are saying, that we will follow the MEG4 guidelines, and we have this MSMP, LMP, and all those things. So whether we are following those procedures or not. The only difference I would say, which the pre-MEG4 and the post-MEG4 in terms of auditing, is uh, we need to check few more items. The number of items we need to look into has uh, needs to be a bit more than PMG four times. So to cater to this requirement of higher scrutiny or self assessment, I would say the internal audits what we are talking about is as part of the annual audits. As you know, probably it takes about 2 days or max 3 days, depending on the vessel's operational requirements. We'll have to complete the internal audits. So in that process, it might not be possible to look at entire gambit of your mooring operations. Like I said, different criteria of mooring operations, including not only the equipment but the human element of it as well. So that's why this idea of having a separate uh, mooring audit was mandated, and it's not only the operators decided, but TMSA also uh, requires the mooring audit to be carried out. The TMSA or element 6A 4.3 says comprehensive audit has to be completed by suitably qualified and experienced company representative. So I mean, I would not say that there's nothing new in this, uh, but this is since this
It
is
was always there.
yeah, it was always there. TMS requirement, and then it can be asked or verified during your wetting inspections. So that's the only difference I would say, that you are going little little more into checking those things. So
Correct.
that's part of that's as for the audits of moorings. And then when you asked about the second part of the question was review of your mooring systems, mooring
Mooring
plans, and all
review.
those
Yeah.
things. Yeah, mooring review. See, the mooring review, even MEG4 says mooring review to be carried out. I mean, it doesn't technically say that, directly say that a mooring review needs to be carried out, but we review the mooring systems on board to verify that they are meeting our MEG4 requirements. So
Right.
once we do that can be vessel specific. Mostly that has to be vessel specific because every vessel has to be MEG4 compliant. Once we do this review and then whatever changes needs to be done for to comply with your MEG4 requirements, uh, there is no specific requirement to carry out a review again, uh, unless there has been a change in the design or some equipment has been changed, some um, there has been some repairs which have been carried out, which could alter the uh, design of the moorings on board, which could be a deviation from the original mooring arrangements on board, as per which we did the calculation for MEG4, and we said that now we are compliant with MEG4. Unless something happens like that, there's no specific requirement for carrying out a review. And then reviews when we are doing constructing a new vessel or a vessel coming into our into management, something like that. Then we need review needs to be carried out. And then of course, if there has been an incident involving a mooring equipment or something, so it's always a good idea to carry out a review again to see that the equipment and everything is still complying with the MEG4 guidelines.
Correct.
That's it about review.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So, if I understand correctly, Captain Ravishekhar, that mooring audit is required. It is required. There is a fixed time interval for that. And mooring
Yeah, that's
review is, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the I missed out on that probably the time interval. TMSA requires the mooring audits to be carried out once a year, but since we are talking about the enhanced auditing of moorings, many of the operators have made it in their internal procedures the mooring audits to be carried out twice a year, like we have it at least twice a year.
Okay. Okay. So, to sum up, mooring audit is required at least once a year, and mooring review is something on occasionally it can be done. For example, when MEG4 has come into practice, we have to review our do the mooring review for the entire fleet because that's a big change. And in case of any accidents or maybe near misses reporting. So thank you, Captain Abhishek. I'll go on to a different section since we have talked about mooring lines. We have talked about mooring audit review. I would like to ask you something with respect to mooring equipment maintenance now. Uh, we all know we have been running PMS as long as the ships have been running. But how about, I mean, do tanker operators need to do something over and above something additional as far as maintenance aspects of mooring equipments like winches, stand rollers, or for that matter, mooring chokes, or any other, for example, brake test equipment, or any other mooring equipment are concerned? Captain Ravi Shekhar?
Yep. Thanks for this. This is a pertinent question, I would say, because um, there has been kind of feeling that okay, MEG4 has come. We need to do more of maintenance on our equipment. But what I would say is uh, the maintenance uh, as a prudent tanker operator, any operator would have been doing all the maintenance on uh, uh, on various parts of the equipment, like you say, winches, or yeah, as you said, inspection of winches and maintenance and replacement requirements for your mooring ropes or wires or tails. This Nothing much has changed as far as the inspections and maintenance is concerned. We still continue to do the inspection and maintenance, but at the same time, what I would say, or what we have seen is like since there is an emphasis on the equipment maintenance um, by MEG4, there's a little bit of more emphasis on your how you do lubrication of the wire ropes. So earlier, probably we were using doing with the hands. So probably the penetration was not good enough. So that can be looked more minutely, more in detail by the site inspectors, and then like. Now I think they're looking at whether every vessel has your brake testing kit on board available or
Correct.
not. When you're
Correct.
talking about brake testing kit, so since it is a requirement for as per MEG, so it's a good idea to have it included in probably your critical equipment list. Uh,
Correct.
so these are the few things which uh, uh, we need to look into if we have not already looked into. Uh, so I think it's a good idea to review our PMS of the mooring equipment, uh, especially now. Okay, MEG4 guidelines and then site inspectors are looking into it. They probably will look more detailed into the PMS, what PMS we are following, and is the PMS covering all aspects of your mooring equipment on board, which was probably not the case earlier.
Correct. 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 Understood. So what I understand, Captain Abhishek, that not much has changed as far as maintenance aspect for mooring equipments, but now it has become explicit, and there has to be some operator procedures and vessel actions accordingly. So thank you. I would continue on the maintenance aspect now, but now talking about mooring lines. Uh, Now, how about has the inspection, maintenance, or for that matter, the retirement criteria for moving lines, uh, has it changed as per MEG4, or it can be the same as it was going on earlier, Captain Abhishek?
Yeah, I no the see MEG4. What MEG4 is saying is MEG4 is all about your uh, design MBL, ship design MBL basis that you need to have this kind of thing. So uh, uh, the inspection regime needs to be little better and more frequent, I would say, compared to the earlier days. The uh, it- like early detection, and then which can if there is some deterioration in the condition of the ropes or something, early if it was earlier 3 months or 1 month, probably it needs to be little more frequent now, so that we can identify the uh, reduction and strength of the ropes well in time. So that's the only difference I would say for maintenance in the I mean inspection of the mooring ropes.
Okay, so here again, the inspection, maintenance, and retirement regimes need not be changed, but it has to be explicit since it is very clearly mentioned in MEG4. So thank you, Captain Abhishekar. And with this, I will stop the panel discussion here as we are running short of time. So I would like to thanks again to all the panelists who have engaged with us with this discussion, and I'm very sure that audience would find it very helpful so far. So over to you, Ashish.
Thank you once again. Definitely, it was a wonderful and insightful discussion, and I'm sure our audience must have enjoyed it. So, thank you, all the panelists. Please do not go away. Please stay back. We'll have a Q&A session after the next presentation. Okay. So, moving ahead, we have one more presentation for you. Well, this presentation would be conducted by Mr. Mohammad Dawood, Lancoast Ropes. Mr. Dawood is regional manager for Lancoast Ropes in Middle East, Caspian, and India region. He manages wet cargo segment in the group. He is based in Dubai. So I welcome Mr. Dawood on stage, and over to you. Mr. Dawood, you're on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Captain Ritish. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Mohammed Dawood, and I'm excited to be your presenter for this session. Thanks for joining me, and let's start. Today, our presentation will be divided in three topics. A small briefing about Langhorst ropes, second about MEG4, and number three about Langhorst future view for ropes. Langhorst Ropes is the world leading rope manufacturer for steel and synthetic ropes with more than 200 years experience. Our head office in Snake in Holland. And through the 200 years acting as a market leader for manufacturing ropes, synthetic ropes and steel ropes, we become one of the largest rope manufacturers in the world and the largest producer for fishing net in the world, and one of the European market leader in the plastic recycle. Blankhorst, we are operating worldwide through our sales office and global stock points. And we are like to call them as a service point because this point are not only for stocking ropes, but we have a qualified team, splicer. They can attending the vessel for inspection, for training the crew, rejacketing for some ropes, and other services. We are operating as a Langhorst ropes in many categories in more than 6 market application: ship mooring, which we will speak today about that, tug and towing, heavy lift synthetic, and also crane ropes, dredging, and barge mooring. When we speak about OCMF, as we all know that it came in 2018 to enhance safety, which is the core for what we all do, and to enhance the communication and the relation between the ship owner and ship operator and the rope manufacturer, and also to increase the communication. Also, it came with a new terminology because during the MEG3, we have different terminology, like only the MBL, and some ropes manufacturers are considering the unspliced MBL. Some of them are considering spliced MBL in their certificates. So the ship design MBL and the LDBF came to unify and to have only one value, which is a standard, and to be having for each diameter and to be tested accordingly for line, for tails, and so on. And MEG4 came with both responsibilities for ship owner and ship operator to comply by having the ship design MBL to be defined, also to implement line management plan. And also for us as a rope manufacturer, we need to comply to have all our products, which we shall supply to the wet cargo segment or tankers, to be comply with the test program. So it is a lot of tests to be done. It need to be like it's commercially investing also from us. Plus, it will take time to take all our ropes portfolio to be MEG4 compliance. We start to make it since 2018 as a Langhorst for all our ropes portfolio, but after in 2019 and stuff like that, we start to see what's happening in the market, and that is what we would like to highlight to your good self. The rope maker or rope manufacturer are divided in 3 groups. One group who are fully comply with the MEG4. They did the test as a very MEG4 and attested by third party, by class, and then they are starting to supply to their customers accordingly. Group B, no testing at all, but what they did is they have the format of MEG4 certification, and just they are attested it by their quality department, not by any class. So you can have a certificate which look like MEG4, but when you are looking to the stamp, it is by their quality department, not by a third party. Group C, which we feel it is more, hazard to the industry, is they did partial test. So you can have a rope, which with the certificate, which you have it with the coil 3.1 certificate, is attested by class. But if you go behind, you will find, if you check the type approval certificate, you will find that they didn't did the full test. And this is more dangerous because you are purchasing ropes which comply with a MEG4, but it is not. So you can have 10% or 20% of the test to be done, and that is what the class is attested, the type approval based on it. But this group is not showing you that they did partial test. And then you are purchasing ropes, assuming you comply with the MEG4, but in fact it is not. So you will have less lifetime and high probability of failure and damage and crew safety between brackets. Just to show you how the mooring line-based design certificate look like, and please ensure that down below in the right or in the left, you have a stamp from class, DNV, BV, ABS, whatever, but to be attested by class. And also this is a type approval. I highly recommend for all ship operators and owners to ask to see the type approval, which they have the certificate of the coil based on it. And please go through it, especially page number 2, and see the most two hard or the most critical test: angle endurance and axial compression fatigue. You can find people, they didn't do it correctly, because for angle endurance and axial compression fatigue, it's really judge your ropes quality, because if your ropes have a bad quality or very low quality, you will not pass. So some of the rope maker is they did partial test for the type approval, which it will not be shared with you, but they will share with you the 3.1 certificate, which is not showing the test being done. So we do recommend for you is not only the 3.1 certificate, which comes with the coil, is important, but type approval is very important, base design is very important. And we are proud in Lankhorst that since the launch of MEG4 until today, we have zero comment or zero observation from any inspector globally. So we supply to most of the global fleets worldwide, and we are proud that until now we have zero comment on our ropes. This is what we do recommend for the tanker operator and vessel owner globally. When you need to start the ropes procurement process, please start communicating with your rope maker in selecting the rope. Same as Captain Yazad, he mentioned that you need to select the suitable ropes for your operation. So you need to have, as Lankhorst, we have, as you see, we have a lot of wide ropes, range of ropes, of synthetic ropes, but which one can fit your operation? And that has come after the dialogue which happened between the ship operator and the rope manufacturers. Then he can recommend you exactly what is suitable for your ropes. Maybe you are facing some problems in your operation for shaving or handling, that you didn't know that if you are shifting from these ropes to other ropes, that can be eliminated. And we have a lot of successful stories for Habitat in West Africa, for example, or in South America. Some of our customers came to us with some issues, and when we change the ropes to another type, they are very happy. So please, one of the aim of the MEG4 is to increase the communication between the ship operator and the rope maker, which really is very important. Also, for HMBE ropes, what we observed in the market is we think that some of the operators are thinking all HMBE ropes are same, which is not. HMBE ropes is the scientific name of the ropes, is high modulus polyethylene. Same as if you say nylon, same as if you say polypropylene, same as if you say polyester. But HMBE ropes produced by many of the fiber manufacturers. And if you go for example, Dyneema, which are the first company came to develop the HMBE ropes under their commercial name Dyneema, you have a lot of fiber grade, which we always recommend to our customer is please don't order ropes, HMBE ropes, without going and specify which grade you are requesting, because some grades are not applicable for mooring and for towing and whatever, which is your application. So always what we recommend for mooring ropes is SK78, which give you at least 3 more lifetime than any HMBE ropes in hand. And we have a proven track record for that. It give you 4 times of a creep lifetime. And we will come later on for creep. And also abrasion resistance. So the grade of the fiber is very important for you to select the HMBE ropes that you need to put it in your vessel. So and this is very important, because not all HMBE ropes are same. You can procure one of the HMBE ropes, you are investing your money, and in the end of story, after 3 years, 4 years, it will damage, which is not not usual practice. We have it with HMBE ropes. Our HMBE ropes, for example, for some application can sustain for 10 or 15 years on board. And that's why I say you need to go through the fiber grade when you are requesting the HMBE ropes. One of the things which we say a creep performance, which is something very critical to the rope lifetime. Creep is the irreversible elongation. So you have the amount of creep influenced by the temperature, the tension, time, and type of HMBE ropes. So when the ropes are elongate, it will not come back to his original one. So it will be irreversible elongation. So it will be elongate with you over the time under the tension and also influenced by temperature. At certain time, it will break. And that's why you can say, I'm using HMBE ropes and suddenly it's break. So you need to ask yourself, what is the creep performance for your ropes, which can take us back to the fiber grade. And if you see the chart down below, you have our Lanco force, which is produced by SK78, and you see his elongation over the time, and you see other generic HMBE ropes. And this data is proven data, is came from practical life and also from our laboratory, which can give indication about, the creep lifetime for ropes. And also for your good information, we can run for you a creep performance report. Before you purchase the ropes for your application, for your vessel, we can theoretically, with some data, we can calculate to you the creep performance over the year for your ropes on board your vessel. Another thing also you need to take care about when you are procuring the ropes is the training and installation, and also the manuals, instructions, which exactly can guide you through the rope lifetime. And for us as Lankhorst, we are considering that the start of the journey with our customers start with the supply, not end with the supply. Because when you supply the ropes, you need to take care of the training, installation, and also to give him the manual when he need to make end-to-end, when he need to make a rotation for the ropes, when he need to cut and make retirement criteria. So it's a lot of things. So training and installation is something you need to take care about that, and also to increase your crew awareness of HMBE ropes, which is not being treated as polypropylene or polyester or nylon. Or if you are using steel and convert it to HMBE ropes, so you need to increase the awareness of your crew about this is not same as steel. It is same as steel in the elongation side, but in handling is different. So you need your crew also to take care about what ropes they are using it. That's why in inspection and maintenance, we are providing as Lankhorst to our customer globally for increasing the awareness, because we see that the key for having more lifetime for your ropes on board is to increase the awareness of your crew. It's one of the items that we need to make it. Also, residual strength testing This one we are, as Lankhorst, we are doing it before MEG4 to many of our customers, especially in tug and towing. But when MEG4 came and say this is you need to do it to set retirement criteria, we really actively doing it for our wet cargo customers globally by taking samples from the ropes to our laboratory, tested, and send the report to our customers and give him as also recommendation, which I can say it is really adding a lot of commercial benefits to many of our customers. We did it not only for ropes, but some customers requested us to do for tails, and we successfully increased their lifetime of tails from 18 to 24 months. So if you accumulate, you can see how much benefit commercially it can come to you after that. And this is one of the main things, that the communication, conversation with your rope maker is very critical and very important. Recycle and retirement of ropes, as Lankhorst, we are accepting under agreement for some of our ropes to be recycled and to be used as like a polymer product, like a dick sheets or some for charity things. This is also one of the things that we are doing it. Also for the online certificate, online access certificate, for this is, I think, very important, especially for the companies who have a big fleet. Instead of because we some of the challenges I think tanker operators are facing is because of changing of crew and stuff like that. Sometimes you miss certificates of the ropes, and you have inspector coming on board next day and stuff like that. Then start panic to search for the ropes and stuff like that. So we have, for Lankhorst, we have online certification portal, which you can have a username and password, and you can download the certificate whenever you like, from the office, from the vessel, from anywhere you are. You can download the certificate with one click. And the last part, we are speaking about how we see the future for mooring ropes. We are focusing in our R&D about safe and easy operation, and sustainability and digitalization. I will pick one of them to highlight because of the time limit. I will speak about sustainability. Lankhorst Ropes is the first rope maker who produce and supply a bio-based Dyneema fiber. So it is a Dyneema ropes, HMBA ropes, but came from the bio-based fiber, and we did supply to many of our customers with the ISCC certification, International Sustainability and Carbon Certification. It is the same. It's MEG4. It's everything same, but it's increasing the sustainability credential for some of our customers. For your information, for producing 100 meter of 44 millimeter, if you reduce this from nylon, you will make 3,120 kg of CO2 emission. But if you go, for example, for the bio-based Dyneema, you will produce 250 kg CO2 emission. So you are contributing to the environmental protection, which we encourage many of our customers to do. And actually, we have a lot of customers now specify the bio-based, because there is no big difference between both, but this is contribute to their sustainability credential. Last but not least, I need to just highlight two slides. Quality. Everybody, like a rope maker or anybody supplying for any services or product, he say we have a quality ropes. But what does quality mean? So what I'm requesting from all tanker operator is you need to dive in for the ropes construction, coating, and also fiber grades and where it is produced. All of these things you need to dive in to define which rope is suitable for your operation, because we have in the market a lot of things which for the rope manufacturer, they only give to the tanker operator or the customer only a copy of the certificate, 3.1 certificate. But you need to go beyond that. You need to request where this rope's being manufactured. Is it manufactured under the same brand or in a different third-party factory? Is it under their quality department or not? and also for the type approval, and also for base design certification. So you need to define which ropes and which quality can fit your ropes in order to eliminate and reduce the risk. And one of the slides, the last slide, which is a little bit hard to see, but we always remind ourselves and remind our customer is we are all working from the rope manufacturer side, from the ship operator side, for the safety of the crew, which is not compared to any other things, which is always in our top priority. And as per the latest statistics, 53% of the incident on board came from the parted ropes, and 14% of it bring this for the human, which we need together as a rope manufacturer and tanker operator and other operators as well to start to communicate, to try to filter what being supplied on board in order to eliminate all of this risk, all of this hazard. And I would like to thank you all for your time. And please, if you would like to, continue the conversation, or if you have any other question, you have my email address. You can text me anytime, and I will be happy to be in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dawood, for that wonderful presentation. And I'm sure our participants enjoyed that thought-provoking session filled with immense learning, which they'll be able to take back to their professional journey. Now, I would like to open the floor for the Q&A. And for that, I would like to invite all our speakers on stage. So we have all our speakers on stage right now, and I will hand it over to Captain Ritesh for a Q&A session.
Thank you, Ashish, and thank you, Mr. Dawud. Let's start. Let me start the exciting leg of this webinar, that is question and answers. We have been receiving a lot of questions, so I'll start without wasting any further time. Uh, question. Okay, Captain Chakshu. First question is addressed to you. This question is from Mr. Tabriz. He asked, can BRC, brake rendering capacity, be reduced or increased uh, more than or less than 60% of STMBL? If yes, then by how much? How much percentage? Yeah, Captain Chakshu.
Thank you, Ritesh. Thank you, Mr. Tabriz. Uh, yeah, so as I mentioned in my earlier answer to Ritesh's question, that how do we determine SDMBL? SDMBL has to be determined for a vessel basis a lot of criterias, lot of standards which are already in the market. We cannot just rely on the brake rendering of the winch. We have to first calculate the SDMBL of the vessel. So I can see a lot of question basis SDMBL. So I will touch base upon again this topic, that first things first is to uh, decide the SDMBL value. And SDMBL value is basis the vessel's hull size and form, the standard environmental criteria, and the vessel's mooring arrangement. Basis that, which is mentioned in MEG4, basis that we come to a value. And there is another question where they say that how do we come to a minimum load? Uh,
Correct.
Yeah. So why I'm emphasizing on this is we just cannot directly go on the brake rendering. We have to first calculate the SDMBL of the vessel. So SDMBL of the vessel is the load what that vessel, that dead weight of the vessel can take. And in the MEG guidelines, there in appendix, it is clearly defined the longitudinal and the transverse forces. So, which is called which and a detailed calculation is mentioned about the wind and the current drag forces. And these forces are calculated basis some coefficients. These coefficients are provided by a detailed study done by Lloyd's and the OCIF members on various types of ships, and they have given us, on basis of that study, some coefficients. Using those coefficients, we come to a value which that size of vessel can take. And availability of the number of winches on that vessel, we divide that particular load by the number of winches, and we get the load on that vessel. And basis that load, we decide the SDM bill of the vessel.
Right.
And we can, yeah, when I think he is trying to reach out to a point where, in the if the vessel is designed in a different standard and what is today. So yes, I think if the winch is designed a holding capacity of something, we can definitely not go above it. But yes, if the terminals are asking for a limiting factor, or if the vessel is trading in some pattern in some area where the forces are less and they ask us to use a lower rendering, yes, we can recalculate the SDMBL basis the criteria given and figure out the right rendering for that vessel. So that I hope I have answered the question.
Yeah, in fact, Captain Chakshu, you have answered two questions at one go. So thank you for that. Uh, the next question, uh, this question, yeah, the name is not written. So I'll just take on the question. Uh, how to utilize principles of MEG4 for moving patterns and calculation and number and strength of moving lines required to secure the ship at a berth. How to account for that, Captain Yazad? Do you
Uh,
have this
yeah,
question
well,
on your screen?
uh, yeah, I heard you say it out loud, so I
Okay.
think I can talk about it. So,
If you want, I can
uh,
repeat.
yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
When deciding on the number of lines, so basically MEG4 already calculates the standard environment criteria that the ship is required to be designed for, and you have that a vessel would encounter 60 knot speed wind speed while alongside from three directions, and then the mooring arrangement is prepared, or the mooring philosophy is prepared at the design stage itself, with the standard environment criteria. So the assumptions are a certain current with 60 knots either from right ahead, or 45 degrees on the bow, or from the beam. And having calculated the weights involved, or the restraining weight forces required, uh, the moving arrangement plan is built or designed, and the SDMBL is arrived at, right? So the mooring arrangement plan, which all ships have, the ropes that are available on the winches, that itself is designed for this kind of criteria. So if you follow that plan, if you follow the standard mooring arrangement plan, that should generally cover all variables that one ship would encounter in its operation. There would be some specific challenges which are local, and where pilots come in, and they would give their own advice and guidance. But in general, for the vessel staff or for the designers of the MSMP, it's not really needed that every mooring operation you have to calculate the forces involved and decide on the
Right.
mooring lines.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
does
Thank
that,
you.
I think that answers that, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Yazad. Thank you. Next question has come up for Mr. Dawood. Mr. Dawood, this question is for you. How are the, this is asked by Mr. Gopal Rao. The question goes, how are the retirement criteria determined for mooring wires and mooring ropes? I'm certain each oil major has their own standards, which may or may not be similar. Mr. Daud?
Yes, hi, Captain Ritesh. Thank you for the question. Actually, we as a road manufacturer, we always work on the ship design MPL, which we are having from the ship manager and ship operators. And from this one, we have the gap to work on it from 100 to 105. And the good thing is that we have in Lancor is that we have all the the diameter and things that can fill these gaps to whatever your, for example, if your ship design MBL is 70 ton, so we have it from 70 to 73.5. We have LDPF which match this gap. We can give to you. Also, we have tails which also can match this gap. So whatever your ship design MPL is there, either 70, 50, 100, whatever, we have it. And we are feeding our stock points globally with such this range to can comply with our, our customer requirement globally. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Daud. Thank you. Uh, Next question is for Captain Chakshu Datta. Uh, Here it goes. The sender has not written his name, but I'll go ahead anyway. Suppose the vessel SDMBL is assigned as 50 tons. Hence, the LDPF range becomes 100 to 105%, that is 50 tons to 52.5 tons. And suppose the ropes on board are rated at 53 tons or say marginally higher 54 tons. Uh, do we need to replace the ropes? Yes, Captain Sakshu.
Yeah, thank you, Ritesh. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And in
Right.
fact, after the launch of MEG4, many of the owners who had recently replaced their entire ropes on board were facing this issue. So this specific question says that if the SDMBL is 50, and if we take the LDBF of 50 to 50, I think 52.5 you mentioned, correct? And if the
Correct.
vessel
52.5,
has
100 to
slightly
105%.
over than that, yeah, slightly over rated ropes, let's say 54 tons, there is no issue. There is no issue, and there is no immediate requirement to change the rope. The only thing, the as an operator, which we need to log down and be aware of, is the gap. We as an operator and master and know that yes, the SDMBL of the vessel is this, the LDBF required is so and so. But having said that, we still have a rope which is slightly over strengthened, let's say another 1 or 2%, and we are aware of this gap, and a training is being done, and we can log it down in our risk assessment. And that risk assessment has to be attached to the LMP of the vessel. So that way we can address this issue. Immediately changing and bringing it back within that criteria is not required. It is just that we need to be
Well,
aware of what is on board. Yeah, I hope that answers.
okay. That's a very crisp answer, Captain Chakshu. I'm sure that will be a relief to many of us. So thank
Yes.
you.
Captain Ritesh, yes, I just would like to agree with Captain Shakshu about that. We really faced a lot of our customers have the same issue with a slightly gap, and same as Captain Shakshu said that when they are putting this in their risk assessment with their knowledge of this gap, and also sometimes they putting that maybe they take from us the correct specs for the correct rope for the coming procurement process. Also, they can capture this one, so they can show the inspectors that they are aware about the gap, and this is their action and in the next supply they will go and procure the comply ropes to the ship design MPL. So this is can go without any problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for adding on comment, Mr. Daud. We are getting a lot of questions about snapback areas. So I'll mark this question to Captain Yazar. Uh, the question goes, uh, what changes have come as far as snapback zones, or now it is called areas, are concerned? Now, what changes do we need to do? Any changes on board with respect to snapback areas changes as per MEG4? Captain Yazar.
Uh, yeah, hi. Snapback zones is something that has been around in the guidelines for a while. It's also in MEG3, and even before MEG4 came out, the concept of managing snapback zones has changed. So we had other OCIMF guidelines and publications, VIQ, where it was already said that unlike what was given in MEG3, where snapback zones should be marked, uh, giving suspected areas which were more susceptible to a snapback, uh, an entire area or a mooring area should now be a snapback hazard area, right? So MEG4 has pretty much just continued on that kind of ideology or uh, thought process regarding snapback zones. What is important is to understand that snapback is more of a hazard with some types of ropes compared to others. Uh, it's basically a function of the elasticity and the lack of stiffness of a rope. So the more elastic, or which is composite ropes, the consequences of a snapback or a recoiling of the rope or broken rope can be more severe. Still, even with HMP rope, these can stretch enough for having a considerable snapback hazard. Especially, mostly HMP ropes need to be used with a composite tail. So there is a snapback hazard, and uh, what MEG4 comes up with is the design philosophy also should include the snapback hazards. So it says that the designers and ship operators should work together to remove personnel exposure to snapback during mooring operation. Now this has to be done at the design stage by uh, designing the area where mooring operations are to be done in a better way. It has to be done by taking a human-centered approach to the design of the area. So where a platform is constructed, a person would typically stand on that. So those kind of decisions need to be made, keeping potential snapback locations in mind. But from an operator's perspective or from the ship staff's perspective, the earlier regime of marking snapback zones around bollards, around fairlead rollers, is no longer applicable. That has changed in MEG4. In fact, it had changed even before MEG4 came out. But
Right.
yes, now the entire area where mooring operations are to be conducted should be marked as a danger zone, as a snapback area, and anywhere within that area, you could have a snapback hazard. So I think that's
Right.
important.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying snapback area or snapback zone. Next question we have received from, again, the sender's name is not there, but this relates to something which we have not touched upon so far. Uh, does the vessel crew uh, does the vessel crew need any additional training to come up with safe operations and compliance, especially in light of MEG4? Captain Abhishekar, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, uh, MEG, the earlier MEGs also did talk about the training and competency of the actual users or the people on board. Uh, MEG4 specifically mentions about not only the training, it says that we need to carry out a training needs analysis, what they call as TNA. So this TNA can be carried out during the review of our mooring processes on board. So this basically is it involves three stages. The first one is the task analysis, like what are the mooring operations that are expected to be encountered on board, what the crew is going through, basis the operational requirements, whether STS, what will be the uh, environmental conditions, sectional environmental conditions. So that's kind of that analysis of the task what the crew is required to carry out. Then once we have established what's the task the crew is expected to do, we need to look at their training. I mean, we kind of need to do a gap analysis on that training, and then once we do the gap analysis, basis their present training or competency or knowledge levels, we need to have the additional training if required or refresher training. So that's the stage 3. So since MSG4 specifically mentions about this TNA, training needs analysis, I suppose it's a requirement. Yes. And then this training, what they're talking about is again uh, is further subdivided into 3 sections. One is your knowledge of the crew, uh, of basically it's about the job familiarization uh, when they're carrying out in any mooring operations. The second one I would say is the technical competency, the um, mm, I mean technical knowledge about their equipment, what they're using, like your SDM, MBL, and then what is the properties of the mooring ropes we are using, depending on what type of ropes we are using. So these kind of things are like technical uh, competency, I would say. And then the third one is non-technical competency, which is more of a behavior-based. Uh, mm, I would say how they behave on board during the mooring operations. This can be improved or enhanced by training and then guidance by the senior staff, or it's like your toolbox talks on last minute risk assessment. These are kind of tools for doing that, and then kind of alap. These are the kinds of tools we can use to enhance the behavior based. I mean, how will they behave during the mooring operations. That's comes under the non-technical competency of the crew. So basically, yes, the training is very important, and the training records can be verified during site inspections.
Right. Thank you, Captain Abhishekar. I'm sure that this answer had a lot of references from human factors, which is going on nowadays. So thank you for giving us such a comprehensive answer. Captain Deepak Gupta has asked a question, but I think it has been answered in a similar question. So I hope Captain Deepak Gupta got his answer. Then one question comes from Mr. Dawood again. This is about certification issues, Mr. Dawood. Uh, the question comes from Captain Rajesh Ranjan. Is it required to have a classification society stamp on the mooring group certificate? If so, class should be a IACS member or not? Mr. Dawood, would you like to take that
Yes.
question?
Thank you, Captain Rajesh. It's a very good question from Captain Rajesh Kumar. Yes, we can say yes. It is required for third party to attend the test in our factories when we did the MEG4 testing, and it is required for third party to be there. and it is required to be IX member, which majority of classification society nowadays is IX member. So for us as Langhorst, all our props is under DNV type approval. Others they can use ABS or others. So yes, we can say yes, it shall be under third party or classification society. Yes.
So, Mr. Dawood, I mean, with ropes, what I understand from your the conversation so far, so there shall be two different kind of certificates, one for the ropes and one for the base certificate, something like that.
Okay. There are three certificates, and the three are
Right.
linked together. It's the one which you take it with the coil. It's called 3.1 certificate, and on it the
Okay.
performance indicator was mentioned, plus the type approval number and base design number. So it is linked to base design and type approval, and also base design certificate which will link it to type approval. So the type approval is mentioned on top of it, and it contain the performance indicator stamped by third party, and also it contains the range of your product. For example, if I have ropes, I did the test of it. So in base design certificate, they mention you did the test from like 20 millimeter to 80 millimeter plus or minus. So they give you the range that you executed the test based on it, plus the type approval certification, which have some information about where this rope's been manufactured. That's why I say it's very important to have a look on it, because it might, the supplier who is giving to you is he is not the manufacturer, and he manufacture in third party factory. He doesn't have any control on the quality or something like that. So it is written in the type approval. Plus, you have more information about angle endurance, actual compression fatigue. So what my recommendation is, not only because what when we are receiving the RFQ from some of our from the market, he say, please share with us a sample certificate. Sample certificate is meaning the coil certificate, which is the last one coming to you. But behind it, you need to check the base design, and you need to check the type approval, because maybe the 3.1 certificate come with the coil. It is in the layout of MEG4, but it is stamped with their quality department or their internal department. So, which nobody judge if they did the test correctly or they did it or not. So you need to navigate what is behind the certificate. And I think we encourage many of our customers is to qualify the bidders. Any of the rope manufacturer he is approaching to be one of your supplier, please ask him to give you in advance this set of document which you can review, and you say, I can accept you or not. So this is can put you in more safe situation, because once the incident happen, all of these topics will be open and all the investigation will become. So if you need to make it in advance, so it is better for the operation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving us such a practical answer, Mr. Dawood. As long as all goes well, nobody is questioned. But if something goes wrong, then everything comes under the microscope. Uh, okay, we have more questions coming, but we are short of time. So I'll take one last question, but be rest assured that all your queries will be answered through email. So let me take one last question for today. Uh, this question, again, the sender has not written his name, but let me read it out. What are the consequences if vessel is not complying with D by D requirement? I repeat, what are the consequences if vessel is not complying with D by D requirement? I think Captain Yazad has spoken a bit about it, so I would like to direct this question to Captain Yazad, please.
Yeah, hi. So again, like I mentioned, uh, hardware cannot be changed so easily on ships, as we all know. And there were regimes in place even before MEG4 came out, right? There was MEG3, there was MEG2 before that. There are IAX rules, and vessels can be designed to any of these. Like we saw in MEG3, the D by D requirement was set at 12. That has now changed in MEG4 to 15. Now, obviously, you know, with the new MEG, a vessel cannot change that so easily. So, the consequences of the D by D requirement is the more that the line bends, it affects its braking strength, right? It reduces the braking strength of a rope the more it bends, and the more of dynamic cycling of these bending factors over a period of time, it can reduce the braking strength faster. As we know in MEG4, retirement criteria is roughly set at 75% of the strength of the rope, and these are the kind of things that maybe you can consider when you make your risk assessments for mitigation when the vessel is not fully compliant with MEG4. So there will be several parameters that you may not be able to fully comply with MEG4 right from the get-go, right? Maybe your
Right.
ropes are oversized, maybe uh, let's say D by D requirement is not being fulfilled. So there are several ways you can probably deal with that. Maybe you reduce your inspection frequencies. Maybe you reduce the replacement frequency of mooring ropes. Another consideration is so D is the diameter of the bollard, and the small d is the diameter of your mooring rope. Maybe consider replacing high diameter soft synthetic composite fiber rope with a lower diameter HMP rope if that is going to make you compliant. So the important thing to understand is there are going to be non-compliances with MEG4, especially existing vessels, and sometimes even vessels delivered just around 2018, 2019, because the building contracts could have been, in the older regimes. It does not mean the vessels are going to start getting rejected left, right, and center. Have a plan in place, have an assessment in place of the situation, have a plan in place to mitigate some of those concerns. Uh, Maybe consider if you can bring the vessel in compliance in some phased timeline, and that should be enough. It doesn't mean the vessel is going to get rejected if your D by D is less than 15. Yeah, I think that
Right.
that
Thank you.
answers
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the such a
Yeah,
practical advice, Captain Yazan.
Captain
So
Atish, I
I'm sure
just would
that
like to add about with Captain Yazid. I
yes,
fully agree with him, and also we always recommend our customer also to take our opinion when they are having the over the issue. They can come back to us and we can give them some recommendation. Also for winch turn, if he is not able to make the turn or his winch drum is small and he is not able to make the 10 turn or something like that or 6 for the conventional rope. So we always recommend him to come back to us. We have our modules, we have our technical modules, so we can check and we can give him advices as well to be in consideration. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for adding on, Mr. Daud. With this, we could have continued, but we have to stick to that time. So I would close the live question and answer session here. But as I told you, all the queries will be answered by me through email. So uh, So here, let me close the session. And before that, I would let me thank once again, express my gratitude to all our speakers for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. Their contribution was invaluable, and we are grateful for the time and effort they put into preparing for this webinar. At the same time, big thanks to all the attendees by joining us in large numbers today and sending us a big list of questions. I'll try to answer them. Let me tell you, without you all attendees, it without your interest, this webinar would not have been possible at all. If you have any further questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you very much, Captain Dinesh Kumar. And I believe the kind of question and answers that happen, people got an insight of MEG4 challenges and that they'll take back to their organization. So thank you once again. And with that, I hope the audience has experienced an engaging and informative discussion on the subject matter. Remember, our panelists are those few who had personally experienced MEG4 challenges and they successfully navigated out of this. So the information shared here is real and practical and can be used on your fleet. So, on behalf of the entire team, I wish to thank all for attending our webinar on pathways to tackle MEG4 challenges organized by Blue Tech Media and powered by Broadside Marine. We would like to hear your feedback on the webinar and any suggestions you might have for future topics. Also, before you leave, request you all to please click the poll button and give your opinion. This will help us to understand the exact challenge being faced by your fleet. Thank you once again for attending, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.